The mountain wind bit through Eleanor's threadbare shawl as she stumbled through the snow, her thin boots offering little protection against the frozen ground. 3 days without food had left her lightheaded, her vision swimming with black spots. The small mining town of Silver Peak had turned her away. A woman alone, with no husband, no family, was considered either a burden or worse. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the last thing of value she owned. Her mother's silver locket, worn smooth from years of desperate touches. Through the curtain of falling snow, she spotted a cabin, massive logs stacked with expert precision, smoke curling from a stone chimney. Her legs buckled, and she fell against the rough-hewn door, her knock barely audible over the howling wind. The door opened so suddenly she nearly collapsed inward. A mountain of a man filled the doorway, so tall and broad she had to crane her neck to see his face. He had to be nearly 7 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to span the width of the doorframe. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, wild and untamed, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Pale blue, like ice reflecting sky, set in a face that bore the marks of violence. A scar ran from his temple to his jaw. Another crossed his brow. "Please," Eleanor whispered, holding out the locket with shaking hands. "I can trade this. I just need—" Before she could finish, darkness claimed her. She woke to warmth. A fire crackled nearby, and she lay on something soft. Furs, she realized, bear and wolf pelts piled thick. The cabin was a single vast room, every surface speaking of a solitary life. Tools hung in perfect order, a massive bed built for a giant, shelves lined with books that seemed incongruous in this primitive space. The man sat in a chair that looked too small for him, carving something from a piece of wood with hands that dwarfed the knife. "Your locket's on the table." His voice rumbled, deep as distant thunder. "I don't need silver. You can leave when the storm passes." Eleanor struggled to sit up, her body protesting. "I have nothing else to offer." He didn't look at her, didn't ask for anything. "I know this is an intense beginning, and I hope you're enjoying Eleanor's story so far. Before we continue with what happens next, I want to ask you something important. Would you mind taking just a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like? It truly means the world to us and motivates us to create more quality content like this. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening to this story from? Are you at home, on a commute, or maybe working while you listen? I'd love to know. Now, let's get back to Eleanor and the mysterious mountain man. The storm lasted 3 days. In that time, Eleanor learned his name, Matthias Thorne. Though he offered little else about himself, he moved through the cabin with surprising grace for his size, cooking venison stew that made her weep with gratitude, checking the firewood, and disappearing for hours to tend his traplines. He never came close to her, always maintaining a careful distance, as if afraid his very presence might frighten her. On the second night, fever took her. The cold and starvation had weakened her more than she'd realized. She thrashed in the furs, crying out for her mother, for water, for relief from the fire in her blood. Strong hands lifted her, impossibly gentle despite their size, and held a cup to her lips. "Easy now," Matthias murmured, his rough voice softening. "Small sips." Through the fog of fever, Eleanor looked up at him, this giant who held her as carefully as one might hold a wounded bird. His face was closer than it had ever been, and she saw past the scars to the worry in his ice-blue eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why help me?" His jaw tightened. "Because I know what it's like to be alone." He bathed her forehead with coy cloths through the night, never leaving her side. When she woke the next morning, clear-headed for the first time in days, she found him asleep in his chair, his massive frame somehow folded into an uncomfortable position so he could stay near enough to hear if she needed him. When the storm finally broke, Eleanor stood by the window, watching sunlight transform the snow-covered mountains into diamonds. She should leave, should make her way to the next town, find work, somehow. But something held her rooted. Not fear of the wilderness outside, but something she couldn't quite name. "I can work," she said suddenly, turning to face Matthias. "To repay your kindness, I can cook, clean, mend. Don't need, please." She stepped forward, and he tensed, as if preparing to retreat. "I have nowhere to go, no family, no prospects. In town, they said—" She swallowed hard. "They said a woman alone has only one choice. I won't do that. I'd rather die." Matthias's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "They say that?" "Among other things." For a long moment, he stared at her. This tiny woman who barely reached his chest, delicate as spun glass, looking up at him with pride still burning in her hazel eyes, despite everything. "Can you read?" he asked. The question surprised her. "Yes, my mother was a school teacher before." "Then you can read to me in the evenings." "My eyes, they're not good for small print anymore." It was a lie, she suspected, but a kind one. "Room and board for that." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Deal." Spring came slowly to the mountains, revealing itself in small increments. Patches of earth emerging from snow. The first brave shoots of green. The return of birdsong. Eleanor's world had narrowed to the rhythms of the cabin, waking to find Matthias already gone to check his traps, spending her mornings cleaning and cooking, her afternoons exploring the area near the cabin, and her evenings reading aloud while he worked with his hands, carving, mending equipment, or simply sitting still, listening. She learned about him in fragments. He'd been a soldier once, in the war that had torn the nation apart. The scars on his body told stories he refused to speak aloud. Bayonet wounds, bullet grazes, the marks of a man who'd survived what killed so many others. He'd come to the mountains to escape civilization, to live where his appearance wouldn't frighten children or cause women to clutch their skirts and hurry past. "They called me a monster," he said one night, his voice devoid of emotion. In the hospital, the nurses would draw straws to see who had to tend me. Eleanor looked up from her book, Shakespeare's sonnets, which he'd requested specifically. "They were fools." His lips twitched beneath his beard. "You're too kind." "I'm honest." She set the book aside. "You're the gentlest man I've ever known, Matthias Thorne." He turned away, but not before she saw the way her words affected him. A slight tremor in those massive shoulders, a tension in his jaw that spoke of emotion held ruthlessly in check. As the weeks passed, Eleanor grew stronger. The hollows in her cheeks filled out, and color returned to her skin. Matthias taught her to fish in the icy streams, to identify edible plants, to read the weather in the sky. He carved her a smaller fishing rod, fashioned boots that actually fit her feet, and left wildflowers on the table without comment. She began to notice small things, how he always positioned himself between her and any potential danger, how he grew tense when she climbed on a stool to reach high shelves, how his eyes followed her movements around the cabin with an expression she couldn't quite read. One morning, she found him splitting logs, a task that showcased the raw power in his frame. His shirt was off, despite the cool air, and she stopped in her tracks, arrested by the sight of him. His back was a map of scars, muscles rippling with each swing of the axe. He moved with the precision of long practice, the heavy tool seeming weightless in his hands. He noticed her watching and froze, color rising beneath his tan. Quickly, he reached for his shirt. "Don't," said softly. "You don't have to hide from me." "I'm not," he struggled with the words. "It's not proper. You shouldn't have to look at what? At you?" She moved closer, drawn by something she didn't fully understand. "Matthias, I've been here 2 months. You've been nothing but kind. Why would I look away now?" He gripped the axe handle so hard the wood creaked. "Because I'm not like other men. I'm too—" He gestured at himself, frustration clear in every line of his body. "People see me, and they see something wrong, something broken." Eleanor's heart cracked. She understood that feeling too well, the sense of being fundamentally wrong in a way that couldn't be fixed. "I see a man worth knowing," she said, using words he'd once used to describe her. His eyes snapped to hers, wide with surprise. "I see someone who saves women dying in snowstorms," she continued, moving closer still, "who reads poetry, who carves toys for the children in town even though they run from him, who leaves flowers on tables and pretends he doesn't. Eleanor." Her name was a warning and a plea. "I see you, Matthias, the real you." He set the axe down carefully, his hands shaking. "You shouldn't. I'm not. I can't be what you deserve. And what do I deserve? Someone normal, someone who won't make you flinch." Eleanor laughed, surprising herself. "Flinch? From you?" She closed the remaining distance between them, and he went absolutely still, like a wild animal afraid to spook her. Standing this close, she had to tilt her head far back to meet his eyes. "I'm too small for you," she said softly, meaning it in more ways than one. Too small, too damaged, too ordinary for this extraordinary man. Matthias's expression transformed. He dropped to his knees in the dirt, bringing himself closer to her height, though he was still taller, even kneeling. His large hands hovered near her face, not quite touching. "Then I'll show you my strength," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not to hurt, never to hurt, but to protect, to cherish, to hold you like you're the most precious thing in my world, because you are." Eleanor's breath caught. "Matthias, I love you." The words seemed torn from him. "God help me. I know I shouldn't." "You could have any man." She kissed him, had to stretch up on her toes even with him kneeling, but she pressed her lips to his, silencing his protests. For a heartbeat, he remained frozen. Then his arms came around her, carefully, so carefully, and he kissed her back with a tenderness that made her weep. When they parted, she was crying. "I love you too, you stubborn man. Do you really not see it? How I watch for you to come home? How my day doesn't start until I hear your voice? How safe I feel with you. But I'm mine," she said fiercely. "If you'll have me." Matthias made a sound between a laugh and a sob, gathering her closer. "Together," he whispered into her hair. "If you're sure." "Together," she echoed. Their happiness lasted 3 weeks. Eleanor had gone to town for supplies, something she'd been doing regularly as spring progressed. Matthias always worried, but she'd insisted. She needed to prove to herself that she could face the world again. She was laughing at something the shopkeeper said when the door opened and her blood turned to ice. Marcus Weatherby, her former fiancé, the man she'd fled from, stood in the doorway. He was handsome in a cold way, his fine clothes marking him as wealthy, his smile sharp as a blade. Eleanor, her name dripped with false sweetness. "I've been searching everywhere for you." She backed up, clutching her basket. "I'm not going back." "Oh, darling." He moved closer, and she saw the shopkeeper quietly slip into the back room. "No help coming from that quarter. You don't have a choice. Your father signed a contract. You belong to me. I belong to myself." His hand snapped out, grabbing her wrist hard enough to bruise. "You've been living in sin with some hermit, I hear. That makes you damaged goods, but I'm willing to overlook it. Let me go. We're leaving, now." He started dragging her toward the door. Eleanor did something she'd never done before. She screamed. Not a cry for help, but a wordless roar of fury and fear. She grabbed a jar from the nearest shelf and smashed it against Marcus's head. He released her with a curse, blood streaming down his temple. "You little—" The door exploded inward. Matthias filled the frame, and for the first time, Eleanor saw the soldier he'd been, saw death in his ice-blue eyes. He took in the scene instantly. Eleanor's torn sleeve, the red marks on her wrist, Marcus reaching for her again. "Step away from her." His voice was glacier cold. Marcus laughed, though it sounded nervous. "This doesn't concern you, mountain man. She's my fiancée. She's mine." Matthias moved forward, and Marcus stumbled backward. "And you just hurt her. It's legal. I have documents." "I don't care." Matthias positioned himself between them. A wall of muscle and fury. "You have 3 seconds to leave this town and never come back." Marcus's face flushed. "You can't threaten me. I'll have the law." 1. "This is absurd." 2. Marcus looked past him to Eleanor. "You're choosing this monster over me?" "Every time," Eleanor said clearly. "Every single time." Matthias smiled then, and it was not a pleasant expression. 3. Marcus ran, actually ran from the store, mounting his horse and galloping out of town. The shopkeeper emerged from the back room, eyes wide. Eleanor's legs gave out. Matthias caught her before she hit the floor, scooping her up as if she weighed nothing. "I've got you," he murmured. "Always got you." She buried her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of pine and smoke. "I'm sorry. I should have told you about him." "Shh. Not your fault." He carried her out of the store, ignoring the stares of townspeople. "Let's go home." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She stood by the window, watching moonlight paint the mountains silver. Behind her, she heard Matthias rise from his bed. They'd been sleeping separately, though it killed them both, and approach. "Talk to me," he said softly. "I keep thinking, what if he comes back? What if he brings the law or hired men? I couldn't bear it if you got hurt because of me." "Eleanor, look at me." She turned, and he cupped her face in his huge hands, achingly gentle. "I've survived war. I've survived wounds that should have killed me. I've survived losing everything I ever cared about. But I won't survive losing you. Do you understand? Matthias, marry me." The words came out rough. Not because of him, not out of fear or practicality. "Marry me because I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Marry me, because when I wake up, my first thought is of you, because your laugh is the best sound in the world, because you see past these scars to who I really am. Eleanor's vision blurred with tears. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Do you love me? Yes. Do you want to spend your life with me? Yes. Then marry me. We'll go to the church tomorrow. The preacher's known me for years. He's one of the few who isn't afraid. We'll make it legal, make it real. And if Marcus Weatherby ever shows his face again, he'll find out what happens when someone threatens my wife. Your wife? Eleanor whispered, testing the words. They felt right. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. He kissed her then, and it was different from before. Deeper, more urgent. His hands slid into her hair, careful not to pull, and she pressed herself against him, frustrated by the layers of clothing between them. Wait, Matthias pulled back, breathing hard. We should wait. Until after. I don't want to wait. Eleanor reached for the buttons of her nightdress. I want you, all of you, tonight. Eleanor. He was trembling, this giant of a man, shaking like a leaf. I'm afraid I'll hurt you. You're so small, and I'm... She took his hand, the one that could span her entire ribcage, and pressed it over her heart. Then go slow, she said, her voice steady. But don't make me sleep alone tonight. Not anymore. If it hurts, you tell me. Promise. I promise. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to his bed, their bed now. He laid her down on the furs with reverence, as if she were something sacred. I'll die before I hurt you, he vowed. I know, Eleanor whispered, pulling him down to her. I trust you, Matthias, completely. What followed was tender and slow, Matthias keeping iron control over his strength, checking constantly that she was all right, that he wasn't too heavy, too rough, too much. And Eleanor showed him that love wasn't about being the same size or shape. It was about fitting together in the ways that mattered, about trust and patience, and the kind of gentleness that was stronger than any physical force. Afterward, she lay wrapped in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. His hand stroked her hair, and she'd never felt safer. Together, he murmured. Together, she agreed. They married the next day, in a simple ceremony at the small church on the edge of town. The preacher, an old man with kind eyes, smiled through the whole service. Eleanor wore a dress Matthias had commissioned from the seamstress. Blue as mountain sky, perfectly fitted to her small frame. Matthias wore new clothes too, his hair tied back, his beard trimmed. Looking almost civilized, except for the wild light in his eyes when he looked at his bride. I, Matthias Thorne, take you, Eleanor, to be my wife, he said, his deep voice carrying through the empty church. To protect you, to cherish you, to love you until my last breath. Eleanor's voice was clear and strong. I, Eleanor, take you, Matthias, to be my husband, to stand beside you, to love you, to see you as you truly are, the best man I've ever known. When the preacher pronounced them married, Matthias kissed her with such tenderness that Eleanor felt tears slide down her cheeks. They walked out of the church hand in hand, and if people stared, neither of them cared. But their peace was short-lived. Marcus had returned with hired guns, 6 of them, hard-eyed men who cared nothing for law or justice, only money. They arrived at the cabin at sunset, spreading out to surround it. "Come out, mountain man," Marcus called. "Send out my property, and maybe we'll let you live." Inside, Matthias loaded his rifle with steady hands. "Eleanor, there's a root cellar beneath the bedroom. I need you to hide there." No. She grabbed her own rifle. He'd taught her to shoot over the long winter. "I won't hide while you fight alone. Eleanor, together, remember? That's what we promised." He looked at her, tiny, fierce, determined, and his heart swelled with pride and love and terror. "Stay low, don't take risks, and if things go bad, they won't." She kissed him quickly. "We're stronger together." The battle was brutal. Marcus's men tried to storm the cabin, but Matthias's marksmanship, honed in war, kept them at bay. Eleanor fired through the windows, her shots careful and controlled. But there were too many of them. One man made it to the door, kicking it in. Matthias met him with his bare hands, and the fight was over in seconds, the giant's strength overwhelming. But two more rushed in behind, and Eleanor screamed as one grabbed her, his knife at her throat. "Drop it," the man shouted at Matthias, "or I cut her." Matthias froze, his rifle aimed but useless. Eleanor met his eyes and mouthed, "Trust me." Then she went limp, dead weight in her captor's arms. Surprised, his grip loosened for just a second. Eleanor drove her elbow into his stomach and dropped. Matthias's shot was instantaneous, perfect. The man fell, but the distraction cost him. Another man fired, and Matthias went down with a roar, blood blooming on his shoulder. Eleanor grabbed the fallen rifle and fired wildly, her shots driving the remaining men back out the door. Matthias, she was at his side instantly, her hands pressing against the wound. "Oh God, oh God, I'm all right." His voice was strained but steady. Seen worse. Outside, they heard horses. The sheriff had arrived, drawn by the gunfire, with a dozen deputies. Marcus and his remaining men were quickly surrounded and captured. The sheriff himself entered the cabin, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. "Matthias Thorne," he said, "I heard you got married. This your wife?" "Yes, sir." Matthias managed to sit up despite Eleanor's protests. "They attacked us. She's legally my wife, no matter what that man claims." The sheriff looked at Marcus, now in chains. "That true, Weatherby? You attacked a man's home?" "She was mine first." "I have a contract." "A contract signed under duress," Eleanor spoke up, her voice shaking but firm. "My father sold me to pay his debts. I ran rather than marry a man who beat me during our courtship." The sheriff's expression hardened. "Show me." Eleanor pushed up her sleeve, revealing old scars. "He said a wife needed to learn obedience early." "That's a lie," Marcus shouted. "She's a—" "Shut up." The sheriff turned to Matthias. "You good people. Known you for years, Matthias. Never caused trouble, always helped when asked. This one, though." He gestured at Marcus. "Heard things about the Weatherby family. None of it good." He tipped his hat to Eleanor. "Ma'am, you're free and clear. And Marcus Weatherby, you're under arrest for attempted murder and kidnapping." As they dragged Marcus away, still protesting, Eleanor returned her attention to Matthias. The bullet had passed through cleanly, but he'd lost blood. She worked with steady hands, cleaning and bandaging the wound, her medical knowledge from watching her mother tend sick neighbors serving her well. "You saved me," Matthias said, wonder in his voice. "We saved each other," Eleanor corrected. "That's what partners do." Summer turned the mountains into a paradise of green and gold. Eleanor's garden flourished, and she'd even started teaching reading to some of the braver town children, who came to the cabin once a week. Matthias's trapping brought in good money, and they'd added a workshop where he crafted furniture. beautiful pieces that sold for high prices in the larger cities. But the best part was the evenings. Eleanor sat in Matthias's lap, her favorite place, reading aloud while he worked on his latest carving. It was a bear she saw, small enough to fit in a child's hand. She stopped reading mid-sentence. "Matthias? Why are you carving toys again?" His hands stilled. "Just in case." Eleanor's heart began to race. She set down the book and turned to face him fully. In case of what? He met her eyes, and she saw hope and fear warring in his expression. In case we need them. Someday. Maybe. Matthias Thorne, are you saying you want children? Only if you do. I know I'm not. People might talk, might say things about a child with a father like me. Eleanor grabbed his face, making him look at her. Any child would be lucky to have you as a father. You're gentle and kind and patient. You're strong enough to protect them and tender enough to comfort them. And yes, she felt tears of joy spilling over. Yes, I want children with you. I want everything with you. He kissed her deeply, the carved bear forgotten. When they parted, both were crying. "I never thought I'd have this," Matthias whispered. "A wife, a home, maybe a family. I thought I'd die alone in these mountains." "Never alone," Eleanor promised. "Not anymore. We're together, remember?" "Together," he agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Matthias's hand rested on Eleanor's stomach. Nothing there yet, but hope was its own kind of magic. "Tell me again," he said softly. "Tell you what? That you don't regret it. Choosing me. This life." Eleanor turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd saved her life and shown her what love really meant. He was a giant, scarred and rough, with hands that could crush stone, but held her like precious glass. He was the gentlest soul she'd ever known, hidden beneath a fearsome exterior. He was her husband, her partner, her heart. "I regret nothing," she said firmly. "You gave me more than shelter that day in the snow. You gave me a reason to live. You showed me that true strength isn't about power, it's about kindness. You are the best decision I ever made, Matthias Thorne." He buried his face in her hair, his shoulders shaking. "I love you so much, it terrifies me." "I know." She held him tighter. "I love you too, always." As night fell over the mountains, they went inside together, closing the door on the wilderness and the world beyond. Inside their cabin, they'd created something that both had thought impossible. A sanctuary built on love and trust, where a giant and a delicate woman proved that the strongest bonds weren't forged from similarity, but from two hearts choosing each other against all odds. Eleanor never forgot those words she'd spoken in fear. "I'm too small for you." And she never forgot his response, which had changed everything. "Then I'll show you my strength." He had shown her, not through force, but through the incredible power of gentleness. He'd shown her that real strength meant protecting what you loved, choosing kindness over violence, being tender with those smaller and weaker than yourself. And in return, she'd shown him that he wasn't a monster. That scars told stories of survival, not shame. That love could look past what the world saw to the truth underneath. That he was worthy, not despite his appearance, but entirely without qualification, needing no justification for being exactly who he was. Together, they were complete. The beauty and the beast, the delicate and the strong, the wounded and the healer. They'd found in each other what they both desperately needed: acceptance, love, and a place to finally call home. The first frost came early that year, painting the world in crystalline white. Eleanor stood at the window, one hand pressed against her still flat stomach, the other holding a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Behind her, Matthias worked on expanding the cabin. They'd need more room soon, though she hadn't told him yet. She wanted to be sure. Dr. Morrison, the town physician, had confirmed it yesterday. 6 weeks along, he'd said, and healthy as could be. Eleanor had walked home in a daze, equal parts terrified and elated. They'd talked about children, dreamed about them, but the reality was suddenly overwhelming. "You're thinking loud," Matthias said, appearing behind her. His arms came around her waist, so carefully, always so carefully, and she leaned back against his solid warmth. "Am I? Been quiet all morning. Something wrong?" Eleanor turned in his embrace, looking up at the man she loved. In the months since their marriage, he'd grown even more dear to her. She knew every scar, every expression, every small gesture that revealed his thoughts. Right now, worry creased his brow. "Nothing's wrong," she said softly. "Everything is very right, actually." His eyes narrowed. "Eleanor Thorne, you're being mysterious." "I have news." She took his massive hand and placed it flat against her stomach. "We're going to need that cradle you've been secretly carving." For a moment, Matthias didn't move, didn't breathe. Then understanding dawned in his ice-blue eyes, and his knees buckled. He sank down, his face level with her belly, his hands shaking as they framed her waist. "A baby?" His voice cracked. "We're having a baby?" "Yes." Eleanor's own tears started falling. "Are you happy?" Instead of answering, Matthias pressed his forehead against her stomach, his shoulder shaking with silent sobs. Eleanor ran her fingers through his hair, giving him this moment. When he finally looked up, his face was wet with tears, but radiating joy. "Happy doesn't cover it," he managed. "Terrified, grateful, amazed, but yes, happy." "I'm scared too," Eleanor admitted. "What if—" "No." He stood, gathering her close. "No what-ifs. We're going to be fine, all three of us. I promise you." That night, as they lay in bed, Matthias's hand never left her stomach. "I'm going to build them the best toys," he murmured, "and teach them to track, to fish, to read. They'll know every star in the sky, every plant in the forest. They'll know they're loved," Eleanor added. "That's the most important thing." "They'll never doubt it." Matthias's voice was fierce. "Not for a second." Winter settled over the mountains with a vengeance. Eleanor's belly grew round as the snow deepened, and Matthias became impossibly more protective. He barely let her lift anything, hovering constantly until she finally snapped at him one afternoon. "Matthias Thorne, I am pregnant, not made of glass." He looked so stricken that she immediately felt guilty. "I'm sorry. I worry about both of you." Eleanor softened, taking his hand. "I know, but I need to stay strong. The baby needs me to be active, to be healthy. Dr. Morrison said so." "Then I'll help you be active, but safely." He had that stubborn set to his jaw that she'd learned meant no arguing. "We'll walk together. You'll teach me more reading, but no chopping wood, no hauling water." "Deal," Eleanor interrupted, kissing him. "You take care of the hard labor. I'll take care of growing our child." The town's attitude toward them had shifted dramatically. Children who once ran from Matthias now waved to him, and their mothers, upon hearing Eleanor was expecting, had started bringing gifts. Hand-sewn baby clothes, blankets, advice. Eleanor had initially been suspicious of the sudden friendliness, but Matthias had explained. "They see you chose me," he said one evening. "See that you're happy, carrying my child. It changes things, makes me less monstrous in their eyes. You were never monstrous. To you." He kissed her forehead. "But I'm grateful they're being kind. I want our child to grow up accepted." A knock on the door interrupted them. Matthias tensed. Visitors were still rare, but relaxed when he saw who it was. Sarah Miller, the schoolteacher, stood on the porch with a basket. "Mrs. Thorne," she said warmly, "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all. Please come in." Eleanor ushered her inside, noting how Sarah's gaze skittered nervously to Matthias before settling. "I'll give you ladies privacy," Matthias said, already moving toward the door. "No, please stay." Sarah surprised them both by saying, "What I have to ask concerns you both." She took a breath. "I'm getting married in the spring, moving to Denver with my husband. The town needs a new teacher. And I thought, Mrs. Thorne, would you consider it?" Eleanor blinked. "Me? You were teaching those children already, remember? Before." Sarah gestured vaguely at Eleanor's belly. "You're wonderful with them, patient, creative, and the children adore you. But after the baby comes, we can work around that. Perhaps start with just a few hours a week, increasing as you're able. The schoolhouse is small. We only have 15 students. Please, think about it." After Sarah left, Eleanor turned to Matthias. "What do you think?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I think you'd be an excellent teacher. But it's your choice, always." "I'd like to," Eleanor realized. "I'd like to be more than just a wife and mother. Though both those things are precious to me," she added quickly. Matthias smiled. "Then do it. I'll support you in whatever you choose." Spring arrived with explosive color, transforming the mountains into a painter's dream. Eleanor was 7 months along now, her belly prominent, her movements slower, but still determined. She'd taken the teaching position and discovered she loved it. Loved seeing young minds open to knowledge, loved the structure it gave her days. But today, she wasn't at the schoolhouse. Today, she was helping with the church social, despite Matthias's protests. Women bustled around preparing food, while men set up tables outside. Eleanor was arranging flowers when she felt it, a sharp pain in her lower back that made her gasp. "Mrs. Thorne?" one of the other women noticed. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, just—" Another pain, stronger this time. Eleanor's water broke, soaking her dress, and pandemonium erupted. "Get Matthias! Someone fetch Dr. Morrison! Clear a room at the back!" Eleanor found herself being hurried inside, women surrounding her with surprising efficiency. She tried to stay calm, but fear clawed at her throat. Too early. The baby was coming too early. Matthias crashed through the door like an avalanche, his face white with terror. "Eleanor!" "I'm here." She reached for him, and he was at her side instantly, taking her hand. "It's too soon, Matthias. Something's wrong." "Shh, nothing's wrong." But his voice shook. "Dr. Morrison will be here soon. You're strong. The baby's strong." The labor was long and brutal. Hours stretched into an eternity of pain, Eleanor's screams echoing through the church. Matthias stayed beside her the entire time, letting her crush his hand, whispering encouragement, his own tears falling unchecked when he thought she couldn't see. Dr. Morrison finally arrived, examining Eleanor with gentle efficiency. "The baby's positioned wrong," he said grimly. "I need to turn it, and it's going to hurt. Mrs. Thorne, I need you to be very brave. Do it, Eleanor gasped. Save my baby. What followed was agony unlike anything she'd experienced. She felt something tear inside, felt warmth that she knew was blood. Matthias held her, his face buried in her hair, his body shaking. I'm sorry, he kept whispering. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. No, Eleanor managed between screams. Not your fault. Never your fault. Then, impossibly, she heard it. A thin, wailing cry. The sound of life. It's a girl, Dr. Morrison announced, but his voice was tense. Mr. Thorne, I need you outside now. Your wife is bleeding badly. I'm not leaving. Now! The doctor's sharp tone cut through Matthias's protest. I need room to work, and you're too big for this space. Trust me to save her, please. Matthias looked at Eleanor, his face a mask of anguish. She managed a weak smile. Go meet our daughter. I'll be fine. He kissed her forehead, then let the women push him out. In the waiting room, he was handed a tiny bundle. His daughter. She was so small, fitting easily in his massive hands. With a dusting of dark hair and Eleanor's delicate features, when she opened her eyes, they were ice blue, like his. Hello, little one, he whispered, his voice breaking. I'm your papa, and I love you more than anything, except maybe your mama. But that's a tie. The baby made a small sound, her tiny fist wrapping around his finger. Matthias sat down hard, overcome. But his joy was poisoned by fear. Eleanor was still in that room, still bleeding, still fighting. An hour passed, then 2. Other men tried to talk to him, but Matthias couldn't focus on their words. All he could think about was losing Eleanor, about raising this precious child alone, about a world without his wife's laugh, her gentle touch, her fierce spirit. Finally, Dr. Morrison emerged. His sleeves were rolled up, his face exhausted, but he was smiling. She's going to be fine. Lost a lot of blood, but she's young and strong. Give her a few weeks to recover, and she'll be good as new. Matthias couldn't speak, could only clutch his daughter and shake with relief. You can see her now, the doctor added. But keep it brief. She needs rest. Eleanor looked impossibly small in the bed, her face pale against the white pillow. But when she saw Matthias and the baby, she smiled. That radiant smile that had captured his heart in the first place. Let me see her, she whispered. Matthias carefully placed their daughter in Eleanor's arms. She's perfect, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Just like her mother. She has your eyes. Eleanor marveled, tracing the baby's tiny face. What should we name her? They'd discussed names, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at his 2 girls, his entire world, Matthias thought of the hope Eleanor had brought to his life, the light she'd kindled in his darkness. Hope, he said softly. Let's name her Hope. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Hope Thorne, it's perfect. The first months with Hope were simultaneously the hardest and most beautiful of their lives. Eleanor recovered slowly, her body weakened by the difficult birth. Matthias took over everything, cooking, cleaning, teaching, caring for the baby when Eleanor was too exhausted. He did it all without complaint, with a tenderness that made Eleanor fall even more deeply in love with him. Hope was a remarkably easy baby, though she was small, worryingly small, according to Dr. Morrison. Premature babies often are, he assured them. She'll catch up in time. But as weeks turned to months, Hope remained tiny. At 6 months old, she was the size of a 3-month-old. She was alert and happy, reaching milestones on time, but her size concerned everyone. She takes after me, Eleanor said one night, trying to ease the worry she saw in Matthias's eyes. I was always small. But what if? Matthias couldn't finish the thought. What if something was wrong? What if he'd passed on some defect along with his size? She's perfect, Eleanor said firmly. Different doesn't mean wrong. You taught me that, remember? Hope chose that moment to grab Matthias's beard and yank, giggling at his startled expression. Despite his worry, he laughed. You're strong, at least. Going to give your old papa trouble, aren't you? As Hope grew, it became clear she would indeed be small. Petite, like Eleanor, with none of her father's towering height. But she was healthy and bright, with a personality that was pure sunshine. She fearlessly crawled toward Matthias's massive form, climbed him like a mountain, and demanded stories in a high, imperious voice that made them both laugh. The town had fully accepted them now. Seeing gentle giant Matthias with his tiny daughter melted even the hardest hearts. He'd carry Hope through town on his shoulders, her delighted shrieks of "Higher, Papa" becoming a familiar sound. Children who once feared him now begged for rides on his back, and he patiently obliged, a living jungle gym for half the town's youth. Eleanor returned to teaching when Hope was 8 months old, bringing the baby with her. Hope would play in a corner of the schoolhouse, watching wide-eyed as Eleanor taught reading and arithmetic. The students adored her, taking turns entertaining the baby during breaks. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost too good to be true, which is why Eleanor should have known something would disrupt it. The letter arrived on a cold October morning. Eleanor recognized the handwriting instantly, her father's. She hadn't heard from him since she'd fled years ago, had assumed he'd washed his hands of her. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Eleanor, your mother is dying. Consumption. The doctors give her weeks at most. She asks for you. I know I don't deserve to ask anything of you after what I did, but she's innocent in all this. Please come home, if only to say goodbye. Your father. Eleanor read it 3 times, emotions warring inside her. Her mother, gentle, kind, broken by years of abuse from Eleanor's father, was dying, and she wanted to see her daughter. What is it? Matthias asked, seeing her distress. Eleanor handed him the letter. His face hardened as he read. It could be a trap. I know, but what if it's not? What if my mother really is dying, and I don't go? I'll never forgive myself. Matthias set down the letter carefully. Then we'll go together. All of us. Matthias, it's hundreds of miles. I said together. His tone brooked no argument. You're not facing your father alone, not after what he did to you. The journey took 3 weeks, traveling by wagon and then train. Hope handled it remarkably well, charming fellow passengers with her bright smile. Eleanor grew more anxious as they neared her childhood home in Missouri. Memories she'd tried to bury, surfacing with painful clarity. The house looked smaller than she remembered, the paint peeling, the garden overgrown. Eleanor's father answered the door, and she barely recognized him. He'd aged decades in the years since she'd seen him. His face gaunt, his hands shaking. Eleanor, his voice cracked. You came. Where is she? He led them upstairs to a bedroom that smelled of sickness and death. Eleanor's mother lay in the bed, a shadow of the woman she'd been. But when she saw Eleanor, her face transformed. My baby, she whispered. You're here. Eleanor rushed to her side, taking her mother's hand. I'm here, Mama. I'm here. Behind her, Matthias stood in the doorway with Hope, taking up most of the frame. Eleanor's father stared at him with undisguised shock. "This is my husband, Matthias," Eleanor said, her voice challenging her father to say anything negative. "And our daughter, Hope." Her mother's gaze went to the baby, and tears spilled down her sunken cheeks. "A granddaughter. Oh, Eleanor, she's beautiful." Over the next few days, Eleanor split her time between caring for her mother and managing the tension between Matthias and her father. The old man clearly wanted to say something, to apologize perhaps, but couldn't find the words. Matthias made no effort to make it easier, his protective instincts on high alert. One night, Eleanor's father cornered Matthias in the barn. "You treat her well?" he asked bluntly. Matthias looked at this broken man who'd once sold his daughter like property. Every instinct screamed to unleash years of rage. But he thought of Eleanor, of the forgiveness she was trying to grant her dying mother. "I worship her," he said simply, "and our daughter. They're my entire world." "Good," her father's voice shook. That's good. I was a terrible father, did terrible things. Can't take it back, can't fix it. But knowing she's happy, it helps." "She's happy," Matthias confirmed. "Despite what you did, not because of it." The old man flinched, but nodded. Tell her I'm sorry, even though it's not enough." Eleanor's mother passed peacefully 3 days later, with Eleanor holding her hand. Her last words were, "You found love. That's all I ever wanted for you." At the funeral, Eleanor stood between Matthias and her father, the past and present colliding. When it was over, her father approached them one last time. "I know I don't deserve it, but could I hold her? My granddaughter?" Eleanor looked at Matthias, who nodded slightly. Her choice. She carefully placed Hope in her father's arms. The old man stared down at the baby, tears streaming down his face. "She has your mama's smile," he whispered. "Take care of her, Eleanor. Be the parent I never was." "I will," Eleanor promised. As they prepared to leave, her father pressed an envelope into Eleanor's hands. "The house, the land, it's all yours. Paid off. Maybe sell it, use the money for something good." The journey home felt different, lighter somehow, despite the grief. Eleanor mourned her mother, but there was closure now. A chapter finally ended, and Hope, oblivious to the heavy emotions around her, babbled happily about everything she saw. "You all right?" Matthias asked one evening as they rocked on the train. Eleanor leaned against him, Hope asleep in her arms. "I am. It hurt seeing them again. But I'm glad I went. Glad she got to meet Hope. Glad I could say goodbye." "What do you want to do? About the house?" "Sell it," Eleanor said without hesitation. "Use the money to expand our cabin. Maybe buy more land. Build something good from something painful." Matthias kissed her temple. Together. Always together. Hope's first birthday was celebrated with half the town in attendance. The tiny girl, still smaller than average but healthy and vibrant, held court like a princess, accepting gifts and attention with regal dignity that made everyone laugh. Matthias had carved her an entire menagerie of wooden animals, each one perfectly detailed. Hope's favorite was the bear. She clutched it constantly, refusing to sleep without it. Eleanor had sewn her a beautiful dress from fabric bought with money from selling her father's house. And Sarah Miller, now Sarah Cooper, happily married, had contributed a slate and chalk. "Starting her education early," Sarah said with a wink. As the party wound down and guests departed, Eleanor found Matthias standing alone near the tree line, staring up at the mountains. She approached quietly, slipping her hand into his. What are you thinking about? Just how different my life is from what I imagined, he said softly. 5 years ago, I was alone, convinced I'd die alone. And now I have you and hope and friends, a real life, not just survival. Any regrets? He looked down at her, his ice blue eyes blazing with emotion. Not a single one. You gave me everything, Eleanor. Everything I never dared to want. We gave each other everything, she corrected. I was dying in that snow, remember? You saved me first. Then we're even. A delighted shriek made them turn. Hope had escaped her nap and was toddling toward them, her tiny legs pumping furiously. Matthias scooped her up, tossing her gently in the air as she giggled. Papa! Again! All right, little bear. Once more, then nap time for real. Watching them, her giant husband and their tiny daughter, so much love between them it was almost visible. Eleanor felt her eyes burn with happy tears. This life they'd built from desperation and hope, from loneliness and love, was more precious than anything she could have imagined. That night, after Hope was finally asleep, Matthias pulled Eleanor into his arms. I want to tell you something, he said, his voice serious. Eleanor's heart skipped. What? I've been thinking about Hope, about how small she is, how delicate, and I realized something. He cupped Eleanor's face in his massive hands. She's perfect exactly as she is, just like you, just like her mother taught me. Being different doesn't mean being less. It means being exactly who you're meant to be. Matthias, Eleanor's voice broke. I spent so long hating my size, my scars, everything that made me different. But you showed me that my strength isn't about my body. It's about how I use it. To protect, to cherish, to build rather than destroy. And Hope will learn that too. That being small doesn't mean being weak. That real strength comes from here. He touched Eleanor's heart, not from muscles or size. Eleanor pulled him down for a kiss, pouring all her love into it. When they parted, both were crying. You're going to be an amazing father as she grows, Eleanor whispered, teaching her to be strong in all the ways that matter. We'll teach her together, Matthias corrected. That's how this works, remember? Together. Eleanor smiled. Always together. They stood at the window, wrapped in each other's arms, watching moonlight paint the mountains silver. Somewhere in the cabin, Hope slept peacefully, clutching her wooden bear. Outside, the wilderness stretched endless and beautiful, no longer threatening, but protective. A sanctuary they'd carved from nothing but determination and love. Eleanor thought back to that desperate girl dying in the snow, trading her last possession for a chance at survival. She thought about the gentle giant who'd given her everything instead. And she thought about the words that had changed both their lives. Then I'll show you my strength. He had shown her, every single day, in 1,000 small ways. And together, they'd built something beautiful from their brokenness. A love story that proved the strongest bonds weren't forged from perfection, but from two imperfect people choosing each other again and again through every storm. As winter's first snow began to fall, Eleanor whispered against Matthias's chest, I'm too small for you. And he smiled, pulling her closer, his deep voice rumbling with love and certainty. Then I'll keep showing you my strength. For the rest of our lives. Hope stirred in her sleep, murmuring Papa in her dreams, and both parents smiled. This was their legacy, not size or strength or beauty, but love. Pure, unconditional, transformative love. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please, subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Eleanor and Matthias's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.